Happy Monday, everybody. Happy Monday, everybody. Terry said it to me right before I hit record, so I figured I would say that to you. I hope you are having a good start to your week. It's just started here in Colorado, where it's a bright and early 10 a.m. And welcome to No More Mondays. I'm your host, Angie Callen, helping you kick off this week with inspiration to live and work more authentically. And if you are a frequenter of my program, first, thank you. And if you've listened to a few episodes in the last maybe 3 months, you picked up on a theme, and that I've had a ton of incredible guests doing big, bold, meaningful things with their lives and their work. And I met them all at one place, The Thing. And so this morning, you're in for a treat because we are tying it all together with today's guest, Terry Weaver, the creator of The Thing. It's a creative and entrepreneurial event that has become a hub for dreamers, doers, and makers, and a whole circle of my new friends. Terry is also a speaker and author, a business consultant, and an all-around encourager of those who want to stop waiting and start building. He has been a trusted part of my network for well over 10 years, and I am so excited for you to hear the thing from the man himself on how you can figure out your thing, why it matters, and how you can actually do something with it. So without further ado, the man behind The Thing and so many podcast episodes over the last few months, Terry Weaver, welcome to No More Mondays.
Yeah, I've been watching No More Mondays, and I'm like, hey, I know that guy. Hey, I know her. Person after person, I'm like, wait a second. I should start a podcast booking agent and start charging these people for all these interviews.
There's probably a business model to be had there. And we were talking before we started recording. Terry's like, there have been so many podcast recordings come from that event in November. And it's actually really fun. I've been on a bunch. There's more to come that haven't even been recorded or aired yet. And so clearly your thing is doing some things, Terry.
Well, that's kind of the deal. It's like so much of what we do. I mean, I'm here in Nashville. You're in the middle of nowhere, Colorado. And we're sitting here in our offices doing our thing alone. And I realized that was a trend and we needed to put a stop to it because being alone is it gets really hard to go far. And one of my core values is I call it if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And it's and the longer that I have been like chasing that idea, the more essential I realize that it is.
Yep. It's like the truer and truer it becomes. And you and I have a similar, I would think, principle or an ideal there, because I talk about how collaboration is better than competition every single day. And it's really, same two sides of the same coin. And I think this is probably a good opportunity to let all of those who aren't part of the inside joke in on everything, because we've talked about The Thing for months around here. I want you to tell me what it is and where the concept for The Thing, the event, came from.
Well, so the thing kind of had like it's obviously a double entendre, right? So there was like two parts of it, right? Like anytime like a group of people, I've been speaking at like publicly since I was like 17, and got paid for the first time when I was like about that same age. And
Street cred.
And that's been a minute. As the kids say today, it was in the 1900s.
Oh God.
And so, but anytime like I'm with something or I'm with a group of people and they're like, hey man, what are you going to do? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to go do Bill Smith's thing. It's in, he's got that thing that he does for people. And, I know a guy named Roger Wakefield who's actually speaking at The Thing this year, and he was a plumber that figured out YouTube and is now multimillionaire from it. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go do Roger Wakefield, and I have a thing we're doing. And then there's the flip side is that I realize that I live in Nashville, and I kind of feel like we sort of invented this. We're a city where people move to do something.
Yes,
most people moved here with they call us the third coast, but we're a place where people go because they want to disrupt their life. And there's a culture happening where people are, where it's normal to be doing something that people look at you like, what?
Yeah.
And so I realized that like everyone has a thing. everyone has this, you know, you can say it's a calling, you can say it's a dream, you could say it's a passion, but there's like something that is burning deep inside of them that if they don't do that, that you know, their life feels like it's missing something, and in reality the world feels like it's missing something.
Mm.
And you know, I realized that at this, you know, the other kind of third piece of this is I realized that I had like two groups of friends. One who were these like brilliant communicators, these brilliant speakers, these brilliant leaders that were kind of like living below the radar. They weren't necessarily like New York Times bestsellers, but they were nicer and better people than all those people that I know. Because I know a lot of those people because it's Nashville and a lot of us are here. And then I realized I kind of had this other group of friends was like these people who wanted to be and do that but didn't really know how. And so I thought, what if there was a place where there was an an equal? It's also sort of like, it does kind of have a little evil thing because when people start collaborating and doing things,
You
mischief,
just can't help yourself but do the thing.
yeah, mischief occurs. But I wanted to create an equal playing field where it's like, man, these people come together and they collaborate. And you know what's interesting is the people that you've had on your podcast haven't just been speakers; they've also been attendees.
Yeah.
You know, you know, we're kind of a no green room event. And so there's no place the speakers aren't hiding off in a corner. And I get it. Like I when I go to speak at conferences, a lot of times if there's a green room, I tend to escape there just because it gets overwhelming. Um, but I wanted to create a place where there could be collaboration, not just at the event, but after it. And you've
Yeah.
literally proved that works. That's a viable model. You've actually taken, you know, the other idea that we had was we were going to call it the Assemble Conference.
Hmm.
Um,
The thing has such a better ring to it.
oh yeah, the Assemble Conference sounds like a bad vacation Bible school theme, where somebody makes macaroni crafts. But yet the heart of that idea is that we so often go places and like we take the things home and pack them up, and it feels like you get those
Mhm.
IKEA directions. If you ever bought anything from IKEA, like there's weird looking Swedish gnomes
And
and
no words.
no words, and like there's no like how the heck do I put this together? Because you know, I don't know. I've kind of I let my wife assemble the IKEA furniture that we get when we do get it because I always have a lot of extra parts left over. And
Fun fact, Jim assembles things because I may be a former civil engineer, but I just don't have time for the directions. And so I will get 80% through it and go, oh crap, this is on backwards. At which point Jim disassembles and reassembles it while reading each step of the instructions. So I appreciate that, Terry.
we do have an IKEA bookcase in our library that it's like if you ever had to turn it around, you would realize that it's assembled backwards. But we've just left
Disassemble.
it here.
Hey, slap it up against the wall and no one will
No
ever
one
know.
will ever know.
Yeah. So there's this idea that the thing is the event, because really where we're going is to talk about the other side of the entendre is our things. But
Right.
the idea of this event was to create a place and a space for people to come together and really start doing their thing and doing something with this, you know, purpose, calling, passion, whatever we wanted. It's a doer place is how I see it.
Yeah, and that's definitely it's one of our, you know, we actually have a t-shirt that even says, you know, we're for the creatives, we're for the leaders, we're for the mavericks, we're for the doers. You know, we don't want to just be the place where you come and dream. And I spent, you know, in my previous life I worked in the music industry. So frequently I'd either be in the van or the tour bus going down the highway, and you'd either be sitting in the van driving all through the night or the tour bus sitting in the lounge and talking about, you know, oh, we could do this, and like there would be these awesome
Mhm.
dreams, and nobody ever did them, but it was always like this imaginary, and like I don't want to talk about things that aren't going to get done.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I think as a coach, I really believe that we're given like stewardship over our ideas and the things that are given to us, and I don't want any orphan ideas. I don't want my things that I dream and like create to be like homeless. I want them to get acted on. I want them to, and I'm not saying I do every crazy idea, but I kind of have a differentiator for me that at the point where there's some ideas that I chase and kind of play with, and then there are things that sort of stalk me, and when I feel like something kind of gets to that point, that's when I can't shake it. And the thing was definitely that it was something that I could not shake. And from since we're talking on a Monday, to be transparent, it's probably a really bad business model because events are really difficult.
Yes, and rarely do they break even, let alone make money. But again, that's not. But there's different goals of different business initiatives too.
Yeah, I always tell people in your business, everything doesn't have to make money. Something has to make money.
Yes, and the net has to be black.
Except for when you do your taxes, then you kind of then you don't care what it's.
Yeah, you can't.
You want to write off every post-it note that you.
Very good point.
Every coffee meeting that you had.
Exactly. And in case for any of you out there who are listening to this podcast instead of watching it, I want to paint a little scene for you as we move from talking about the thing, the event, and we start talking about the fact that the thing, the event was something Terry had to do because his thing is helping people do their things, right? There's like meanings upon meanings here. But when we talk about kind of dreaming and turning it into doing, I have to paint this picture for you because Terry's sitting in his office wearing a Lovers, a Dreamers, and You t-shirt that is from a past thing. We all love Kermit the Frog. And behind him is a giant colorful Mickey picture with no less than about 100 stuffed Mickeys, Jiminy Crickets, I See a Dumbo, and the like. And so it just gives you an idea of this kind of like creative mind we're working with and why it's so, and how he's been able to take these, a lot of times creatives aren't good at channeling ideas into do. And I love that you found that to be your thing. And I'm curious now that we've painted this picture of like who good old Terry Weaver is. If your thing is helping others do the thing, why do so many people not do it? You mentioned earlier your two groups of friends, and there was one who were like amazing and kind of living under the radar about putting themselves out there, whether it was because they didn't realize it or didn't feel comfortable. But why do so many people either feel unclear about their thing or are reluctant to step into it?
I have a rule that's one of the first questions that I ask. And it's actually part of a free course. If you go to discoveryourthing.com, it's in there. It's one of my rules. I call it the Spice Girl rule. And there's a lyric in Spice Girl song, not Zigga Zig Pa, but tell me what you want, what you really,
really want.
Most people don't know what they want.
Why?
I had a speaker that we had at the thing this last year who's a billionaire or close to it. Or he's definitely moved that much money in his business. And I asked him and he was like, I don't know what I want. So many people on every level just don't know what it is they really want because we're so used to being, we're, here in America, and I know you have probably global listeners too, but like there's this idea of like the American dream of like, this is what your prescribed life should look like. You should go and have 2.5 kids and a dog, and you should go and work a job that, is going to protect you and it's going to be there for you.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are probably waking up on a Monday morning and realizing the American dream is a nightmare for them. And they want something more. They want something different. And so I think obviously it comes down to a lack of clarity, and it comes down to what it is they really, really want in life, and the ability to say to everyone else, I'm doing my thing. I can't not do this. And I think one of the like this, and this is really morbid, and I apologize. But I think one of the things that's the most helpful is to ask yourself, what do you want to be said about you on your deathbed?
Mm-hmm.
And what are the things that you really, one of Stephen Covey's rules is beginning with the end in mind.
Yep.
And if you were to look at your life backwards, what are you like steering towards? Where are you driving? I remember when you had the schoolie, when you had the bus. Like, where's your bus going?
Uh-huh.
Right? Because at some point you can't just randomly drive that thing around. It sucks gas, right? You've got to like have a
6 miles
destination.
to the gallon on diesel, baby. When diesel was 4 miles to the gallon, we parked that puppy and saved all the money to buy a house is where that schoolie was going. But we knew that's what the goal was.
Right. You had a goal, you had a destination, and you were working for it, right? Like you wanted a lifestyle and you wanted the ability, you wanted the freedom that you have now.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are led to believe that that freedom isn't possible. I mean, even think about the culture we're in right now. I mean, while we're recording this, we're just, we're dealing with like this news of like Bill Gates, who basically just came out, Bill Gates, the man that gave us the blue screen of death. I haven't used a Windows machine in a long time, so I'm free of you, Bill Gates.
Yeah, but you got the beach. You've got the spinning beach ball of fury. So let's talk trade-offs.
But what I'm saying is, he basically said that this, like, the AI is going to replace everyone, like the doctors. Like, okay, and I think that's sort of what we do. I might make a recommendation to some of y'all. Man, unplug from the news and go live your life.
Read less news. Read less, because and we will avoid that soapbox specifically. But when you talk about the American dream and how challenging it is, it's very challenging right now for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, a lot of reasons.
And you will be shocked. You would not be shocked, actually, how many clients I have told literally their homework is scroll less, read less news. And it doesn't mean completely be non-informed, but if you are always focused on external things that suck your energy and your hope, you're never going to turn around and look inside and figure out what your thing is.
Yeah. And here's kind of my general rule. I want to be focused on the things I can control.
Yes.
The reason I left the music business is because I no longer felt like I could make a tangible difference in that space. I did not have the relationship capital, and I had a lot of relationships, but I wasn't ever going to be able to move that sinking ship. I wasn't ever going to be able to write it because it was so wrong and broken, and the model was. It is so funny because the things that I was shouting in the late 90s when I first got in there are all things that have come to me. And a lot of us that think big and dream big, a lot of times we're too early. We're too big to fit in the box that they've tried to put you in.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean, and I think this goes back to your orphan ideas. What's funny, the more and more I hang out with Terry, I realize how much we have in common. We just say the same things in two different ways, which is why the world needs us, because others will gravitate towards it.
Yeah.
But, when you talked about orphan ideas, a lot of times I say pay attention to common themes, because it's the nudge that you're continually getting, that like there is a thing there. And, to this point about being too early, it doesn't mean you're shouting into the void. The people who came after you that were able to kind of carry change over the finish line may have very well done so because you primed a pump.
Yeah. Well, it's the garden analogy. At some point, somebody had to plant the seed.
Yeah.
And somebody gets to reap the reward in the end. And often those aren't the same people.
It's usually not the gardener. It's maybe the farmer. But I also think that there's a layer in here and about people don't know what they want. That's why they don't do the thing, but they also don't create the space, the time, the intention to figure this out. And a lot of times I think that's because of these societal norms and conditions that, like you said, we're conditioned to think it's impossible or that we're not allowed to. And what I think is so beautiful, and one of my platforms for career benders over the last 7 years has been stop playing small and stop being mediocre, because you have more control and more agency over your life and your career and your circumstances than you typically exercise, because we tend to just accept where we're at instead of analyzing it and seeing if it's where we actually want to be or if there is something better. And that's really what drilling down into your thing is all about.
Well, and I think one of the like pieces of this is when you understand what it is that you want to do and where you want to go. I think it's super critical that you surround yourself with people doing that as normal. I think a lot of us put ourselves in environments where, there's a great um there's a great quote by Oprah that said her life changed. In fact, Dan Clouser, who came to the thing, I
Mm-hmm.
used this quote in my talk at Justin Shanks for a very first event that he did, is that Oprah said that her life changed when she stopped surrounding her life changed when she stopped surrounding herself with people that ask why, but ask why not.
Yeah.
And you want to be around people where doing the crazy thing is normal. And I think that's why the communities that you're a part of and the
Mm-hmm.
mentors and the coaches that you allow yourself to be surrounded with. And obviously, like, there's a practical piece. Don't get me wrong. When I'm working with somebody, I'm always like trying to go through like, okay, but like you've got to eat this month.
Exactly.
I
Well, you
get where
can't
you want to
only.
go long term. Let's start charting a course.
Yes.
And I think this is where, in the career space where you've been living for a while, right? Like, this is where what I call a bridge job. Where an
Yeah.
opportunity might be a bridge to get you to where you want to go. Or I think sometimes our skills allow us to have our own like side hustle. Meaning this is our main like passion and project, but yet we also have a skill where we can do graphic design, we do website design, or we are great at like this or that. And it could be super practical, or it could be, you're great at making. We talked about the person that makes the little, crochet potatoes. You may be a great crochet potato where that could be your little side hustle that
Yep.
enables your bigger dream of doing something more and doing something bigger.
I feel so empowered to go order positive potatoes now because I really want to. And Terry's like, those things are awesome. And so here's what I want to do. There are small little threads throughout this that I hope some of you out there might be picking up on, but now we're going to go at it directly. I want to know, Terry, what would you say to somebody out there who were starting to kind of make a little nervous, right? They are like, yeesh, I meant for more, but I can't figure out what my thing is. What would you say to that person?
I mean, if you're watching this on video, you're seeing my office, and there's a great guy. I've had him on my podcast a couple times. A guy named Jason Katecki, and he talks about one of my favorite toys growing up, which was the Tinker toy. But tinkering is a very powerful process to go and start experimenting. The people that you look at in the world that are like, wow, they are super, super successful. A great example of this, and I hate that he's a politically charged name, is like Elon Musk. He didn't launch a rocket into space until he crashed a rocket into the ocean. And I think that we need to learn that people I mean, we joked about Bill Gates and the blue screen, right? Like, these are billionaires that are at the highest of high
Mm-hmm.
levels, that we know them for their failures.
Yeah, which is a great. So I think that there's this idea of like, even if you don't know what the thing is, just start doing something.
Yes.
Instead of being caught up in fear. Perfectionism, I think, is a huge culprit in why people stay small in society today, because we can see the failures so much more readily because of social media.
Pers-
But distractions or excuses, right? I can guarantee you every single one of you out there has an inkling in the back of your mind of the thing Terry and I are talking about, and kind of pushing you to lean into. You just don't start for a various quote unquote reason, which is, i.e., an excuse.
Yeah, and perfectionism is just a different way to label procrastination,
Procrastination.
right? And so it's and I get it. Like, you know, one of my coaching clients is someone I've known for the longest time, and he comes from like, you know, the stereotypical Asian family. And like he wants to make a change in his life.
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't feel like he can make that change because he feels like he's going to be letting someone else down. And I want to challenge you that if you're kind of like, at that point where you're a little, you feel antsy and you feel like it might be time to do something different, make sure the regrets that you have at the end of your life aren't that you didn't live the life you wanted to.
Yep.
That you didn't go out there and do the thing that you were made to do. Because I really do believe that each of us has been given um, an opportunity or an assignment, and that we should go do it. And with the craziness that happens in the world, I think that some of us are going to be given the opportunity to do something new, whether we want to or not.
Yep.
And I love the story that they just announced this week that there's a college that's going to have Kermit the Frog do their, and of course, if I'm wearing this shirt today, Kermit the Frog's going to do their commencement address.
So jealous.
It's like, why? Can I enroll in a class?
I
want to go. But I think of that great speech that Jim Carrey famously did where he talks about his dad. And, that his dad lived his whole life chasing this safety and security of a job that he eventually lost, rather than doing that thing that he really always wanted to do. And that we all have the opportunity to do that, to go and do the thing that we've always wanted to do. And it can start small, right? It can start as a side project or and eventually you'll know. And what it might be is that might be the first stepping stone on the way to what you eventually end up doing. Very, very first of us, the very first idea we have is what we do for.
Yes.
I mean, you and I even had a conversation earlier today about like how things are evolving and how things are shifting. And, I mean, this is the 9th year that we've done the thing. So of course the thing has shifted and changed, and our dreams and our priorities and our and our goals and the people we want to help. Because there's kind of the underbelly of this, if you will, that there's a group of people that I really wish I could help, but I can't because they'll never actually do the thing. And Nick Saban talks about this, the former head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide football team. And they're my least favorite fan base in all of America. But Nick Saban talks about how in the culture of a great team, that achievers and people who don't want to do anything are never comfortable in the same space.
Yep.
And that if you have people that are just dead weight, that aren't doing anything, that the achievers are eventually going to either leave because they're going to go somewhere else and I'm all for a space, right? I'm all for creating an environment where some people grow slower than others.
But I think there has to be the will and the intent and the motivations, because otherwise you'll have a group who's getting bored and a group who, is never going to come up to meet the challenge. It's a little bit like you can, that group of people that you'd love to help. I agree. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And unless they have the intrinsic motivation to pursue whatever the thing is, no external force is really going to create momentum.
Yeah. I even talked about this in my mastermind group this week. Somebody used that lead a horse to water quote, and I said, yeah. And I always take it a step forward that I will lead you to water, but I won't waterboard you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to torture you into actually taking action. The opportunities here, I've given you instructions. And I think that this is when you're trying to create a product or a service that helps people, at some point, I have to put the obligation on you to take the action.
Yes.
Much like this great gift I was talking about, I'll hold it up.
That I love this.
It's a desk dumpster that I've had now for 2 years that I haven't yet assembled, but it's still here. And it's literally, I moved it from the pile in the corner to my desk, which is, not It,
Oh, I'm just sitting here thinking, I wish we could see the rest of this room. But
yeah,
now is the time for the desktop dumpster fire to be opened. And you've said a couple little tidbits that I kind of want to pull together
yep,
because we talk a lot here about values driven, purpose driven work as a pathway to a more fulfilling, more authentic life. And I think it's so important to highlight and just call out the fact that in a way that's what we're talking about with
yeah,
the thing. And Terry and I are completely on the same soapbox in the same echo chamber or whatever you want to call it. When we talk about the idea that we all have been given gifts to carry out some sort of purpose that is intended to have an impact on this world. And that could be the world or that could be a single human in it. And by not doing so, you are keeping it from that person. And that
yes,
is a pretty audacious thing to do. Who are you to keep your gift and your light in this world from the people who need it? And the last thing I'll add is that in doing so, you will be more fulfilled and have no regrets because the worst person you can disappoint in this world is you.
yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I'll even go. I always kind of I like to take things and put them in like, as you can tell, there are trinkets everywhere in my office, and the reason there is a lot of these are a souvenir or a moment. And one of the things we do is we give out random things tied to stories because I think objects teach us lessons.
And stories teach us lessons.
Right. And
Absolutely.
I always take it to this like extreme when I talk about people and their gifts. Imagine how upset you would be if you found out someone had the cure to cancer and wasn't sharing it with us. You and I and everyone else has the cure to someone's cancer. We have You have that gift and that skill and that ability and that way of thinking that is keeping someone up at night. But yet you could do it in your sleep. And once you discover that, and you mentioned purpose and values, and I've been going through a lot of that work because I think it really
Mhm.
all goes down to our core values. And I just wrote an article about this that there are three things for me lately that I've noticed of the people that I want to be around, the people that I want around in my community. And it's the people that believe that community is greater than networking. You don't want to just go someplace and just you're there for a transactional relationship. I want to be around people that give more than they take. I want to be
Mm.
around people who, I heard a podcast interview with one of my favorite leaders, and they talked about that they don't want to serve, that they don't want to work with people who want to come over for dinner but want it to go. They just want to like skip the whole, that part of it. And the third piece is I want to be around people who value people more than they value profits. And that's not to say that money doesn't matter. Money matters. In fact, you
We
can
all
help
need
more
roof
people
over
with
our
more
head and
profit.
food, right? Yeah, absolutely.
But yet understanding those values, and I
Yes.
think that's one of the things that I've learned myself is I have a real hard time helping someone who doesn't do the work to root themselves in their purpose.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have a rudder and if you don't have a destination, and I'm not saying I'm not willing to help you find those things, but if you don't get to the place where those things are really, really clear, and you have to distill it down, right? You have to do the hard work. These are hard work things.
Yes.
These are go and find a journal and write them down.
Inner work is the hardest work you'll ever do, which is probably one reason why most people don't do it. And if you're not willing, you'll never get to the heart of the matter.
And if I'm being honest, all three of those things are probably trauma informed for me.
Interesting.
That I've been around people who just wanted to network.
Yep.
I've been around people who valued people less than they valued money.
Mhm.
I've been around people that um that only are there to take
Mhm.
and not give. And I think we
I
all
think
have, right? And
yes.
so for me, my answer to that was what if, why not me?
Yeah.
Why not me to actually solve some of these problems?
Yeah.
And I think, if you're listening today and you're sitting there and I love that it's No More Mondays, right? Because Monday's a day that a lot of people dread. Sunday night is the number one night that people have heart attacks because they dread going to work on Monday. And
Yep.
I think of one of the people that I've worked with over the years who works in a federal job and hates their job. And what keeps them there is what's kept them there is the idea that these things could never be taken away. And now that there are things, that could be taken away, they're kind of
That belief
reevaluating.
system is getting shaken to its core right now.
Right. And,
Yeah.
there's some good and there's some bad in that, right? We can argue about whether the timing and how that's being handled or whatever. We can argue about that all day. But the reality is, don't outsource your future to someone else.
Yes. And can I jump in and say one thing here? What Terry and I, because I agree with that. I think we lean into employment with a false sense of security that we don't have control over, but also not everyone is meant to necessarily be an entrepreneur. I think our point here is to take the agency that you have so that you are controlling what you can control and you're not leaving your destiny up to chance or someone else.
No, I think very much the same things. The best employees are ones that have an entrepreneurial mindset.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to a restaurant and there's great employees that are treating it like it's their business, when they're motivated by, when you go somewhere where profit sharing is a big part of it, you can tell those people care because, I think of in 2001 when Chick-fil-A and then sort of In-N-Out Burger about the same time went to the Ritz-Carlton to figure out how they could do hospitality at a higher level because it wasn't normal. And I think really what we're saying is not just do your thing, but stop chasing normal. Start being unique in what you bring and start bringing you to the table. What I don't want you to do, if you want a 9-to-5er, man, and that's what makes you happy and you're thriving, do it. There are a lot of people that are great number twos.
Yep.
There are a lot of people that are great in the third seat. There are a lot of people that is like their gift and their talent and their skill. And sometimes as an entrepreneur, I realize that maybe most entrepreneurs will tell you that they would dream of having a CEO to take care of and doing all of that other stuff. In fact, that's actually the number one thing that I see a lot of really high level entrepreneurs. Russell Brunson is a big name that's done that, where they bring in a CEO to run the company so they can be the chief dreamer.
Yep.
And I think whatever you have discovered is your thing and that thing that you bring to the table. And I talk about entrepreneurship enough. And I don't want to ever dog someone if you want to. I have a great friend that is a producer of a media show, and he's awesome at it, and that's the perfect opportunity. But he also has a really thriving podcast on the side that he does about a passion project, and he makes really great money. And he probably could quit the other job, but he loves the other job, so he does both.
And that's a really good point. So one thing I a lot of times will say, like, being employed versus being an entrepreneur, one is not better than the other. They're different. And I tend to find that you're wired kind of one way or the other. If you find yourself with a little cross wiring, Terry brings up a good point that you don't, I think part of living and working authentically is distributing your identity across some things. Yes, one part of it is knowing the purpose that you fill, because that's where the vocational fulfillment will come from. But I also find a lot of times people will put too much stock in 100% of their existence and fulfillment coming from the vocation and the work. And as soon as you kind of back off that belief and start distributing it across a few different activities, volunteering as a side hustle, a podcast, whatever it is, you start to kind of fire on all cylinders. And I think the big message here is don't take things at face value, but challenge, let's call it the system a little bit, put yourself under question and make proactive decisions on how you want that to look versus accepting the default so many of us are willing to accept, because that's where the thing gets lost.
Yeah. And I think now more than any time, and you're seeing it globally. that I think people are rebelling against this idea of I'm going to hop in line. I talk about it in my book, Making Elephants Fly. When elephants are trained in captivity, they're taught this idea of tailing, which is when the elephant takes its trunk and literally grabs the tail of the elephant in front of them. And we teach kids that in kindergarten in America. You're taught to stand in line and get in line. And that's not just something we do to maintain children's safety at school. It's something we're taught as a societal norm that you get in line and you follow the rules.
And that you have a place from the time you're small in that line.
Because one of the things we did at the thing last year is I brought out like this, the cardboard like rocket fort, because I wanted everyone to remember, like, when was that time when you dreamed that anything was possible? And and you're wherever you're watching this today from, and you're sitting there going, man, I'm not really sure what's next. I want you to kind of go back to that moment where like nobody was telling you that couldn't be done. There was a moment where the refrigerator box that the appliance got delivered in was the Empire State Building. Anything was possible, or it was a rocket ship, or it was a submarine, and nobody could tell you otherwise. And which is why sometimes it's like, turn off the screens, kids, and dream again. And so I would say the same thing that you're probably telling your children to you. Dream again and think about what did you think was impossible when you were a kid? What did you think that and that everybody said no, you can't do that, but you didn't believe it was true. You believe that you could be and do that. And I still believe that's possible for you. It may look different than how you originally dreamed it, but you have the ability to design the life and the experience that you want. And it's just a matter of the only difference between the people who have it and don't are the people that decided to take action. The people that decided that they were going to make the choice and no one else was going to tell them otherwise. And that's not to say that people in your life, whether that be your family or your spouse even, is going to look at you like you're nuts. But man, I'd rather have a little friction over a discussion of like the next phase of my life than get to the end of it and have regret.
Then miss it entirely.
Yeah. And that's the saddest. Do you ever, I'm a plane sleeper. I get on an airplane. Typically by the time they're telling me to put my seatbelt on, I'm passed out. Unless
that's Jim.
Unless
and
I'm
I hate you too for it.
Up, and I know that I want to drink. I know that I've got a drink coupon, or I want my Mr. T's Bloody Mary mix, or my ginger ale for the flight, or whatever I want. Right. I don't know why I order those things, but those are typically things I get on the plane that I don't ever drink in real life. But man, I normally pass out, and like you wake up and it's like, oh, we're landing. I've missed the whole flight. And that's the way that a lot of us live our lives. We get lulled to sleep, and all of a sudden we've arrived and realized we're not where we intended to go.
Yep.
The joke at the front door when you're like, hey, we're on our way to Dallas. I was like, I was wanting to go to Dallas today, and I think a lot of people have gotten to a destination, and I'm here to tell you that it's not too late to change it.
Yep.
And you may be 30, or you may be 40, you may be in your 60s.
It's not too late.
It's not too late. You still have the power to change. Your best days are ahead if you're willing to take action. And bet on yourself. Go all in on you. Like a lot of things, we're willing to go all in a lot of things, but most of us aren't willing to go all in on ourselves.
What's that saying? The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the next best time is today.
Yes.
You don't need all of the answers. You just need to start.
My favorite Japanese proverb.
Yep.
And that's so true. You can't control what you didn't do 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But you can control what you do today.
From this moment on, you don't need all the answers. You just need to get started, because the last thing you want to be is a passenger in your life headed to the wrong destination. And if you feel like you need the support of a community who is doing something similar, Terry and crew has it. So this is a great time, Terry, to tell everybody about the thing, because there's a couple events upcoming. Where can they find out more about it? And
The
how do we
best
find about
website
you?
the best website to go to is thething.live. And
There
they
you
can
go.
get to all of the things from there. We're in the plans of going to a couple of bonus cities to do some one-day events. I know we're going to Dallas for sure, in Tampa for sure, and a couple other cities this fall, late summer. Um,
Yours
want to be
truly will be at Nashville at the end of June and at the big thing in Orlando in November. So there you go. There's your shameless plug incentive to come see me. I'll give you a hug in real life. And I have to roll something back to kind of bring this all together, and what we've been talking about. Terry and I have known each other for a long time, and not even in passing, but hadn't really been immersed in each other's communities for a long time. And for various reasons, all of a sudden some worlds collided, and I found myself in the room in November at the thing. And it was so strange because it was just one of those inklings. It was the orphan idea. I didn't want to leave homeless, that it felt like a place I should be. And out of it came all these amazing connections that you've gotten to hear flourish. But what was so amazing to me, and this is just going to reinforce this idea of, you don't need all the answers, you just need to start, and you need the support to keep going. Because I remember walking out of there thinking, man, it's been a long time since I was in a room of people who dream and do the thing that they dream about. And it was just inspiring, isn't even the word. It was almost comforting and cathartic as somebody who is an entrepreneur doing things and dreaming and implementing them, to be in a room, in a space where that wasn't even just the norm, it was expected and encouraged. And so I can't, whether it's the thing or something else, I can't reinforce the importance of putting yourself in a community that will help you nurture this idea of getting started and keep going.
and one of the things I've had to, like, because when I look at it for myself, like, the thing is, these are things I would just do anyways, right? Like, I've come to the understanding through your eyes and other people's eyes that what we do at the thing is special. I don't know why it's not the norm. I don't know why there's not tons of environments that are that way. I don't know why every conference doesn't make that the environment, but we are,
And that's what's special about it, Terry. It's not the norm.
Yeah, and it's that great Dr. Seuss quote about, nothing will change unless the person that cares does something about it. It's the who or here's a who quote. I don't remember the exact quote, but at some point you have to someone has to decide that this is the way it's going to be, and not accept any less. And we're kind of serious about it. When I see people come in and I know that they're, if I sense that people have ulterior motives, they get uninvited, especially from the stage. I don't want people coming in and I want them to experience what happens when, everybody kind of comes in and just leans in and encourages people. And, I'm glad that you are back, and I'm glad that you've found this, that you're coming back to the both big events this year. And, I think that shows a commitment on your part to your personal growth. Because one of the things I've understood, and I think one of the very first things that we did when we started this, is everyone's like, you need to do a bunch of this, and you need to do surveys. So I was like, here's the deal. I only know the kind of event I want to go to. So if I can create and curate a space where, regardless of how familiar this is to me, I'm going to learn and gain something from it, then that I imagine other people will too.
Yep.
And that was all the knowledge I was armed with. Is that, wow, I would be really cool to hear from this person about this. I bet you other people would be interested in this. And that's the same way you probably started when you had the podcast. I'm like, wow, I had a fascinating conversation with somebody. We should share it with more people.
Yeah.
And I'm on here because, we had a conversation. We're like, why do we not record that conversation for one of our podcasts? Like, and that's how actions get started, is because you're around people who dream and think differently, and where being not normal is the norm. And it's not normal to have these conversations we're having and to kind of rebel against safety, uh, or or at least the illusion of safety. Um, and so yeah, I appreciate you and your investment in. Um, it was very obvious when you came to Orlando this last year that you came with open hands. You came to get, you came up, but you came to give way more than you came to get. You were there to you were there to be around something. You had been magnetized to the people that were there. You sensed there was something there for you.
Yeah.
But you showed up to serve totally out. And man, if more people just showed up like that in more environments, and I really do believe that, as you experience that most people, the majority of people that do show up to the thing, especially those that are on the stage and in the core of the community, that they do come with that spirit, and they do want to. There's a sense of like curiosity, which I think is a real differentiator in our community. Is everyone is just curious about what other people do, and they're curious about how they can actually connect the dots for people. And you've experienced that. The people have been on your podcast have, where they've experienced like, wow, this connects. We could do this. We could collaborate here. And a lot of these people do similar work to what you do, but there's no sense of like, when you shift your life from like a scarcity mindset to think,
yes, those were the words I was hoping you were going to say. Yeah,
that scarcity says we better put up the dam and keep the water we have because it's going to run out. And abundance says take down the dam and let the waters roam free because it'll rain tomorrow.
Yep.
And if it doesn't rain, we'll make it rain. Yep. And I feel like the thing is a place where make it rain is normal.
Yep.
And where people are going to commit to, and that doesn't mean that that people aren't, there's still not struggle, there's still not difficulty, but there's a sense of like, those goofy trust falls that we all had to do in some corporate meeting, but that there really is someone there to catch you when you need that. And they're there to give you advice and help and actually, tactics that you could deploy to fix a problem that you're having.
Yep.
Because for the most part, the stuff that you and I do aren't big, massive changes that people are making. They're just tiny little tweaks.
Mm-hmm.
And the shift from abundance to scarcity is not that big of a shift. But once you make it, everything changes.
Everything snowballs. And I think that's a great way to kind of put a stamp or an exclamation point on this kind of whole conversation, because we talked a lot about the event, but ultimately what Terry and I want you to do is go find your thing and lean into it. And I'm so grateful for what you do for these types of communities and for creating a not normal place for we not normal people to be, Terry. And thank you for like kind words for me. I wasn't hoping to like, I'm gonna have Terry for some compliments, but mostly I appreciate you being here with me today and sharing your wisdom with everyone who needs to hear it, and for helping me create, just even in the last 45 minutes, a place for people to really start thinking about this. And where you just left us off, where you just kind of took us to, is I think the perfect leaving off point for this conversation, as we leave you with the food for thought of what's your thing. And more importantly, what is one small action you can take to move closer to doing it? It doesn't have to be a big leap. It just has to be the thing that gets you started. How can you get started this week? Terry
and
Weaver.
I'll take it one slightly step further. Who can you go and encourage in your world to do it with you, so you don't have to do it
with you. Don't do it alone.
Yeah.
Is the extra piece of it.
The greatest gift that you could give to another human on this planet is the gift of belief. And sometimes when we lack the belief in ourselves, we have to borrow it from somebody else. So be a great lender of belief.
There you go, everybody. How can you lend belief to have more belief in yourself? Don't take normal at face value. Push that system and go do your thing. I look forward to hearing more about that thing from all of you. So this is a different call sign off than usual. I want to hear your thing. Reach out to me. Find Terry at the thing. Wait, what is it? The
The
thing dot
thing.live
live
or just terryweaver.com. In
or
fact,
terryweaver.com.
if they're watching
Find
on
us
LinkedIn, they
everywhere.
can leave the comment down below, or they can go to the YouTube
Exactly.
channel and
We'll put links here. We'll put links everywhere. But Terry and I are here to help you shout your thing from the rooftop. So start with us. Find your thing, encourage others through it, find others doing the thing. And most importantly, once you start, never, ever stop. It is how you are going to change the world, even if it is one human at a time. And isn't that an amazing way to live and work more authentically? Terry Weaver, thank you again for joining me for No More Mondays. Everybody out there, thank you for listening and spending this Monday morning with us. Thank you for giving me a place to do my thing. I'll see you next week for another episode of No More Mondays podcast.